Hello everyone, my name is Mr. Rader, and this video is for students who are about to do the lesson on checks and balances, or as a review for students who have just completed the lesson on checks and balances and participation in government. Day 16 is part of Unit 2. And what we're going to look at in this video are the separation of power and checks and balances infographic. And we'll take a look at some scenarios to see how checks and balances can be applied to various constitutional issues in the United States. So the first thing I would like to show you is where we can find this magnifying glass button to zoom in to make it easier to read through the infographic. And we can actually find the magnifying glass right here. And if we click on the arrow, if we put it fit the screen, it's where we're at right now. But I'm going to click zoom in, and it'll zoom in quite a bit so that we can see the actual infographic. And what we want to think about is the legislative, executive, and judicial branch. What are some of the powers that they have, and what are some of the checks that they can employ on other branches? So, for example, the legislative branch, which has a House and a Senate, and both the House and the Senate need to approve any bill in order for it to become a law. If one part of the Congress refuses, then that bill does not become a law. They can raise money via taxes, fees, duties, and tariffs. And if we look at the flow chart, they can reject or confirm a presidential appointment, and that's the power of the Senate. They can impeach a federal official, such as a president, if they were to violate their constitutional duties. And they can override a presidential veto by passing a bill with a two-thirds majority in both the Senate and the House. Likewise, the executive branch can serve a check on the Congress by vetoing any of the bills that are passed by the Congress to make that bill not become a law right away. The executive branch in the federal level is represented by the president and their cabinet. And the president is tasked with enforcing laws, with appointing heads of federal agencies, commissions, and judges, ambassadors, and other types of offices. And they also appoint the judges who will sit on the federal bench. And at the highest level, that's the Supreme Court, but at the lower levels, it's the appeals courts and it's the federal district courts. And the judicial branch can serve as a check on the president by deciding if an executive action or an executive order is unconstitutional, if it violates the Constitution. And through the process of judicial review, the courts evaluate the laws and they determine if they're in fact constitutional. And they can decide if the law is unconstitutional. They can essentially declare the law null and void. But Congress, by contrast, they can decrease or increase the number of justices that sit on the Supreme Court. It's been tried a few times in American history, but it hasn't really changed that much in the last 100 years. And they can propose amendments to overturn a judicial decision that was previously ruled unconstitutional. They can, through the amending process, they can change the Constitution, which is the ultimate arbiter of American law. So let's zoom out and let's take a look at some of the questions that your teacher may ask you to respond to. So in your opening prompt, your teacher likely gave you or will give you a quote that looks at the Enlightenment thinker, Montesquieu, and his argument as it relates to separation of powers from a legislative, executive, or judicial branch. And in really basic terms, Montesquieu argued that if the same individual were to be vested or given the powers of the legislative branch and the executive branch, they essentially become a tyrant, like a king that rules arbitrarily and unfairly. And in the United States, we, as a constitutional republic, we don't believe investing any of the branches with that ultimate authority. And that's why there are these checks and balances. So in the independent work, you'll look through a series of scenarios, and your teacher may have you do this in a variety of different ways. It could be independent work by yourself. It could be with a partner. It could be in small groups. It could be in a Zoom breakout room if you were completing this online. There's really a lot of ways that you can do it. But there's two questions that you're going to answer for every scenario. One, what are some actions that can be taken to check the power of the branch in question? And why are the checks and balances necessary for a scenario like this? So you'll read the scenario. So for example, in scenario one, the president nominates a justice for the Supreme Court, While Congress is concerned about their track record, the president is pressuring Congress to confirm the judicial appointment. Okay, so we have to be able to figure out what action can be taken by which branch to check the first branch's power, and why are checks and balances needed. So the president wants to have a justice on the court, but it's the power of the Congress, particularly the Senate, who has the power of advising and consent to either approve a presidential appointment or to not approve the presidential appointment. So no matter how much the president pressures the Congress, it's ultimately up to the Congress to decide whether or not this judicial nominee will actually be nominated. So the Congress can check the presidential appointment power here. And it's necessary because it may be that the president puts up one of their friends or a supporter or someone who provided with a political donation, and they need to really ensure that the person that's being nominated and then confirmed by the Senate is someone that the Senate actually approves of. And let's do one more scenario. Let's take a look at scenario number 7. The president breaks a law, one attempting to cover up a potential scandal. Okay, so we have some examples of this in U.S. history, most notably looking at the last presidential administration of Donald Trump. But we see other impeachments that go back to the 1970s, thinking about the Watergate scandal under Richard Nixon. And basically, Congress has the power to check presidential decisions and presidential actions by impeaching the president if they believe that the president has violated their oath of office. And again, that check is really necessary to make sure that a president is not able to subvert the law for their own personal gain, which is something that we don't want to see in a democracy. And then in the lesson, your teacher will likely ask you to consider how checks and balances promote democracy, or perhaps maybe hinder democracy if certain popular actions or plans that are supported by the American people are being prevented by either the the president, the legislative branch, or the judicial branch. And then really thinking about if there are any drawbacks to checks and balances. All right, everybody. So that'll do it for tonight's video. Hope everybody has a great day, and we'll tune in our next video. Take care.